You checked your credit score and it dropped, not by 1 or 2 points. We're talking double digits. And you did not miss a payment. You did not open a new account. You did not max out a card. You did nothing. So the natural conclusion is that something went wrong at the bureau. A glitch, an error. Maybe someone else's account got mixed up with yours. That's what most people assume. That's not what happened. The drop was accurate. The bureau recorded exactly what it was supposed to record. And that is the problem, because what it recorded has almost nothing to do with how responsibly you used your credit. It has everything to do with a date. A single reporting date that runs on a clock you never knew existed. And once you see how this works, you'll understand why your score can fall by 30 points in a month where you did everything right. This video is for educational purposes only and is not financial advice. Now, before we get into the mechanism itself, here's something worth knowing. Millions of Americans check their credit score every month and have no idea how the number is actually built. Not because they're careless, because nobody explains the machinery underneath it. Here is how the credit reporting cycle actually works. And I want you to stay with this, because the detail matters. You have a credit card. Let's say the limit is $5,000. On the 15th of the month, your statement closes. That is called the statement closing date, and it is not the same as your payment due date. Those are two different dates. Most people know the due date because that's when they have to pay. Almost nobody tracks the closing date. Here's why that gap is destroying scores. When your statement closes, the card issuer takes a snapshot of your balance at that exact moment and reports it to the three major credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. That snapshot becomes your reported balance. It's the number that goes into your credit file. It's the number the scoring models use. Now here's the part that trips everyone up. Say you spent $4,000 on that $5,000 card during the month. You paid it in full, on time, before the due date. You did everything right. But if your statement already closed before your payment posted, the Bureau received a snapshot showing $4,000 on a $5,000 card. That is 80% utilization. And in the FICO scoring model, anything above 30% starts working against you. Above 50%, the damage accelerates sharply. 80% can cost you 20 to 40 points on its own. Your payment never showed up in that cycle's snapshot. It'll show up next month, but this month's score already took the hit. So the question people ask when they find out is, why is it built this way? And the honest answer is that this is not a bug. It's how the system was designed. The bureaus report a monthly balance because that's what the card issuers send them. The card issuers send the closing date balance because that's what the billing cycle produces. Nobody in that chain is breaking the law. The Fair Credit Reporting Act, which is the federal law governing credit reporting, requires accurate reporting of what was actually owed at the time of the snapshot. And the balance was accurate. You did owe $4,000 on the day the statement closed. The Fair Credit Reporting Act doesn't regulate the timing of when you pay relative to when the snapshot is taken. That gap is legal, and it is costing people real money on real loans. Here's a number that makes this concrete. A borrower with a 750 credit score qualifies for a 30-year mortgage at a meaningfully lower rate than a borrower at 700. On a $300,000 loan, that difference cost approximately $47,000 over the life of the loan. $47,000. Because of a snapshot taken on the wrong day. Think about that. Has this happened to you? Drop your score range in the comments and tell me if you've ever seen an unexplained drop. I read through them. Now, that snapshot is the first hand of the clock. But here's what most people never reach because they stop the investigation at the closing date. The same clock has two more hands, and the second one is controlled entirely by someone else. And before I show you what triggers it, I want you to hold on to the question of who is actually in control of your score at any given moment, because the answer will shift again by the end of this. Credit utilization is calculated two ways, per card and across all your cards combined. Most people know about the combined number. Fewer people realize each individual card's utilization is scored separately, and a single card at high utilization can drag your score down even if your overall utilization is low. Here's where the second hand of that clock comes in. Your card issuer can decrease your credit limit at any time for reasons that have nothing to do with you. They're managing their own risk exposure. Maybe there's been a wave of defaults in your zip code. Maybe their internal models flagged your account type. Under the Credit Card Accountability, Responsibility, and Disclosure Act of 2009, commonly called the CARD Act, issuers are required to give you 45 days notice before most rate increases, but a credit limit decrease can happen with less friction. And when your limit drops, your utilization ratio spikes instantly, even if your balance didn't change by a single dollar. Say your limit was $10,000 and you were carrying $2,000. That's 20% utilization. Perfectly healthy. Then your issuer quietly cuts your limit to $4,000. Same $2,000 balance. Now you're at 50% utilization. You did not spend more. You did not miss a payment. The issuer moved a number and your score took the damage. And if you weren't monitoring your accounts closely, you might not even know the limit changed until you checked your score and wondered what happened. If this is changing how you see the credit system, that's exactly what we do here. Real financial mechanisms explained without the jargon. Subscribe and you'll get one of these every week, built for people who are still putting the pieces together. There's a third hand on that clock, and this one catches people who tried to do the right thing, adding an authorized user to your account. Parents do this for their kids to help build credit. Couples do it to share accounts. Here's the risk nobody mentions. If the primary cardholder's behavior changes, if they run up a high balance or the issuer cuts their limit, every authorized user on that account absorbs the same utilization hit. You didn't touch the account. You may not even have the physical card, but the account is in your credit file, and whatever happens to it happens to your score too. And it runs the other direction too. If you're the primary holder and someone you added starts spending heavily, you carry that. The average American has no idea that their credit score can move by 19 points in a single reporting cycle without a single negative event on their part. 19 points. That's the difference between a good rate and a great one. Between approval and a request for more documentation. Between paying full price for your money and getting a discount on it. And now all three hands are visible. The statement date that freezes your balance before your payment arrives. The limit cut that spikes your ratio without a single new purchase. And the authorized user account that ties your score to someone else's choices. You controlled none of those events. None of them required you to do anything wrong. That is the clock the bureaus are running on. And most people go years without seeing it. That gap right there, between what the system tracks and what you think it tracks, is exactly where real money gets lost. Now let's talk about how to close it. So what do you actually do about this? Here are 3 concrete moves. The first move is to pay before your statement closes, not just before your due date. This is the single most underused tactic in personal credit management. Find your statement closing date. It's on your bill, usually listed as closing date or statement date. Pay your balance down to below 10% of your limit before that date. You can pay the rest when the due date arrives if you need the float. But get that closing date balance low. That is the number the bureau sees. That is the number that counts. The second move is to monitor your credit limits, not just your balances. Most people check their balance when they log in. Almost nobody checks whether their limit changed. Set a reminder monthly. If your limit dropped without explanation, call the issuer. Under Regulation B, which is part of the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, they must tell you the reason for an adverse action on your account, and a limit decrease qualifies. Get the reason in writing. Sometimes limits are restored when the issuer sees you're a reliable customer and you've asked directly. Before the third move, I want to ask you something specific. Have you ever had a credit limit cut without any warning? Because that's the one that catches people the hardest, and I'd genuinely like to know how common it is in this audience. Tell me in the comments. The third move is to request a credit limit increase on your existing cards before you need it. Not to spend more. To lower your utilization ceiling. If your limit goes from $5,000 to $8,000 and your balance stays the same, your utilization ratio drops automatically. You can request this directly through most issuers' apps or websites. A hard inquiry may result, but the long-term utilization benefit typically outweighs the short-term inquiry cost. And if you're an authorized user on someone else's account and you don't recognize it on your credit report, you can ask the primary cardholder to remove you. The account will be deleted from your file within the next reporting cycle. That is your right under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Here's the thing about all 3 of these moves. None of them require you to spend less, earn more, or wait years for your score to recover. They require you to understand the clock the bureaus are running on. The system wasn't built to hurt you, but it wasn't built to explain itself to you either. That's the gap. And now you see it. 3 hands on a clock you didn't know was running. The statement date that freezes your balance before your payment arrives. The limit cut that spikes your ratio without a single new purchase. And the authorized user account that ties your score to someone else's behavior. You controlled none of those events. But now you know exactly how to work around all three of them. That is the promise this video made at the start. And that's exactly what you just got. If you want to go deeper on this, the next video covers what happens when there actually is an error on your credit report and how to dispute it under the Fair Credit Reporting Act in a way that actually works, not the generic letter templates that get ignored. That one's already up. And if this one changed how you see your score, leave a comment with the one thing you're going to do differently starting this month. Those responses shape what we cover next.